So it's been a while since I vlogged about the book, but after speaking with Miss Mosi yesterday, and we were talking about resilience and how what you've been through can prepare you for the things that you are currently going through, right? So let me go ahead and put these on real quick. I'm going to read chapter 6 to you from A Child's Memories of Cartoons and Murder. And then I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things in regards to law enforcement and the Black community, or just the community at large. You'll see. So Lloyd, this man named Lloyd, he was my grandmother's husband, and the man was very peculiar. He still is, but anyways, let's just say I wasn't sad to see them divorce, okay? Lloyd was known to be a peculiar man with odd mannerisms who was known snitch. He had a way of looking at people that made every situation uncomfortable. One day, that I could hear Lady and Lloyd talking, and the talking turned into yelling. I was about 5 years old. Peering down the hall into the kitchen, I saw my grandmother with her back towards the sink, and he was towering over her, shouting in her face. The rest just happened so fast. Lady reached over towards the stove to her right and grabbed a cast iron skillet that she often used for cooking, frying fish. Lloyd began backing up as she raised the pan. They were edging in my direction. Instinctually, I grabbed the phone and ducked under the bed in the room, but didn't close the door. I saw their feet pass the room with as much screaming and rage as I have ever heard. They entered into the bedroom, slammed the door, and it got louder. Something broke, and I picked up the phone, put my little pointer finger in the circle, and I spun it around until it couldn't spin anymore. I put the phone to my ear and started to whisper to the lady on the other end of the phone. And I just said, "I'm scared. Please send someone to help my grandmother." She asked me where I was and our address. I gave it to her and told her that I was hiding under the bed. She asked me where I was and what our address was again. So I gave it to her again. She was making sure. "They're on their way. Just hold tight and stay out of sight," she said. In a few minutes, police knocked on the door, and Lady and Lloyd didn't stop quarreling. Then I saw Lloyd finally go to the door to speak to the officer. Lady came out a few minutes later. I don't know what was said, but I could hear the officer ask if there was anyone else in the house. I got out from under the bed and I walked into the hall so the officer could see me. Soon after that, the officer left and it was quiet for the rest of the evening. So that kind of resonated with me with everything that's going on right now, because I keep hearing the calls to defund the police. And I understand where that comes from. I think it comes from a place of insufficiency in your departments, whichever department is serving your city. First of all, where people are talking about having mental health providers or domestic violence providers instead of the officers, let me just tell you this. Had a mental health professional come in that house, or anybody in my family's house, as crazy as they are, they might have caught that cast iron skillet, okay? Without an officer, that situation goes left. It ends badly. Unless you're going to teach mental health professionals how to be police officers, then there's that. That's a different conversation than defund the police. Without an officer, something bad can happen to a non-authorized person that comes into a home, into a situation like that. Keep in mind, I have experienced a very high level of domestic violence from my childhood to my adulthood. I really can't think of any situation where a mental health professional or a counselor would have been effective in that situation, because the level of crazy in my family is not something that somebody can talk you out of. That does not exist, especially when you're in the heat of something. There's no mental health professional that can come in and de-escalate that the way that it was going, okay? Also, it's important to understand that when we work together on reform, we get things to improve. We work together, we get improvements, specifically on domestic violence. I talked in my book about watching my uncle put his hands on my aunt on several occasions. At one point, she had called the police. I watched this happen, beat her down, took her car. She called the police. They came and basically told her that unless she's going to get a restraining order, there's nothing that she can do. So this was in the 80s, right? People have worked together to get reform. Reform looks different, doesn't look the same. So now there are departments that have a whole domestic violence unit. That includes mental health professionals. That includes people that are experts at dealing with domestic violence. Not only that, they have comfort dogs and they come and take care of it, especially if they know there are kids involved. Then they come out, they deal with the situation, and they also provide help for the children. I spoke at Redondo Beach domestic violence event this past year. It was amazing. It was amazing to see the level of support from the community, not just for the police who were throwing the event, but for the community of survivors. This is called collaboration. We have to be in collaboration with our police officers and our police departments. There is no way around that. There is no one side here. There is no get rid of the police department. There has to be reform. There has to be better training. And just to put some more color on this situation, I'll say, I have had encounters with the police over 100 times before I was 18, none of which was my fault. 100 times. Some of y'all 5, 10, 15, 100 times. And at no point have I ever been witness to police brutality. There were times I wish the police would have had a little excessive force on some of the things that I have had to deal with. Not one time. So hearing that, I hope you understand, it's crazy when you say there is no good cops, bad cops. Listen, this might not play well to a lot of people, but the truth of the matter is, it is. And saying that sounds as crazy as it does when officers that have racial bias think all Black people are bad, or they fear all Black people. Both of them sound crazy. We cannot move forward making crazy, outlandish statements and painting everything with a broad brush. That does not work. My cousins are officers. They are not bad people, and I don't want to see them lose their jobs. I don't want to see them get defunded. I don't want to see them put in a different situation. They like what they do, and they've never been reprimanded. I went to high school with some of San Jose's finest. Some of them probably shouldn't be officers. But you know whose fault that is? Leadership, okay? This all comes down to leadership and responsibility. So if you go to my boy James Bryant's page, and he talks about qualifying immunity, understand what that is, right? So we have a situation where if something goes wrong at a hospital, somebody makes a mistake, you can sue the hospital and the doctor, but not in law enforcement. So that's somewhere where we can decide that there needs to be change, okay? All cops are not bad cops. The police department does not need to be defunded. There needs to be changes. Also, understand that every city, every state has different situations. They do. You know, we had a conversation at town hall the other night, and one of the ladies that was on it, she does not want to see officers in her children's school. So she homeschools. The women on the Redondo Beach Police Department are African American women. Well, some of them. They have a lot of women on their force, first of all. Second of all, the ones that are in the schools are African American women. Why wouldn't I want to see them in the schools with my kids? Now, my kids and your kids get to see a woman of color with authority in uniform, demanding respect at an early age. We have to learn leadership dictates culture for that industry. So speaking of leadership, this is the one thing that I think is important for police officers and police departments to recognize. And if they don't, we'll never fix this. Law enforcement, police, have taken humanity out of an occupation that deals with humans. So explain to me how that's supposed to work. They think that they can replace their heart with their shield. And because they're officers, everything is A, B, and C. But you cannot replace humanity. You cannot replace heart and feelings with a shield or your title. And until they can come to the table and understand that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to be honest about their feelings about a situation, and it's okay to actually lend feeling and emotion to a situation, we're always going to be here. We're always going to be here. For instance, with the last situation, I think all of us, especially everybody that's been in college, has had a drunk friend. We know we can't deal with our drunk friend the same way we deal with them when they are sober. So why would you, as an officer, deal with a suspect like he is sober? My son don't even drink, but when he wakes up, that fool don't know where he at. He's talking gibberish, fall back asleep. So I would be crazy to give him something, give him instructions and expect him to carry them out. This is a kid that has stood up in his sleep and pissed on a wall because he's so out of it when he's asleep. So you're asleep and you're drunk and you want to deal with him like he's a regular person. There is a level of humanity to being in a position that deals with humans. There is a level of heart, human compassion and feeling that needs to go into your job when you are dealing with humans, especially when you are charged to serve and protect these people. It's hard, I understand, to change direction and change culture. But at this point, I think we're all charged with the opportunity to, one, for us, we have to be careful with how we verbalize things, what we say. Messaging matters. Be clear about what you want, but making general statements about everybody, that is never going to fix it. And for our officers that are charged with protecting and serving us, I'm going to need to show that you have a level of humanity. I'm going to need to see you actually say, you're right, that person should not be dead. That's a level of humanity that we have yet to see from the majority of officers. You can't tell me that there is a reason for Sandra Bland to be dead. You can't tell me that. So until an officer can say, you're right, it shouldn't have been like that, she should have never been locked up in the first place, we're going to have a disconnect. And we're going to continue to have these problems. So I'm just asking each of you, because I would not be here without a few hundred officers that have showed up and protected me in various situations, without the officers that came and got me and took us to federal witness protection. I would not be here without the officer that took my report for sexual assault. You got to think deeper than just these surface statements and what work needs to be done. I think we all have a lot of work to do right now. And if we want to make this better for our kids, we need to get to work.